this time we are 10 minutes into the session, the New York session on August 14th to 2025. So at this point, just taking a look at the higher time frame, our C2 time frame, yesterday we had the start of a bearish move. We actually started looking at some moves inside this area here by the time we saw price coming and staying above the EMAs on the C2. And basically from there we had the end of the session. Then we had some stage 1 here building throughout overnight, and then we had this validation of what we can label here as a distribution MB. This is something that we can also see here on the context time frame where we had some move here, some flush, and then we had the validation of this distribution MB and a strong move, a strong bearish move here, building an MMB1 and a flush that actually came just as the market opened. We had this flush here onto the 20 EMA and a close below that, which, if we take a look here at the C2 time frame, is basically a comeback of price back to the EMAs. So this is where we are at this point. So based on our higher time frame, we could be at this point expecting sales if price starts building some sort of stage 1 here and then the start of a new bearish cycle. So we have to wait at this time before we can take any follow-up and trades into this session. So we're gonna basically wait from this point to see what occurs here in terms of sales. We have to see at least here some sort of pause and some sort of price running once again above the EMAs, ideally through some distribution MB that we could label here on the context time frame. And from there, we can basically step down to the validation time frame to follow up on any new bearish price cycle that could develop. So we're gonna wait to see how the session is gonna develop, and then follow up accordingly.
Amazon shares up 2.5%.
So at this time we are 1 hour into the session, and out of this point here, which was the EMAs under C2, we were expecting to see some sort of reaction for a push to the downside, to the bearish side, but actually that something that did not happen, and price kept on pushing to the upside, and this was a close below the EMAs on the C2, and from there we have seen the continuation of price to the upside. So at this point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip the charts so that we can see price the upside basically, so that we can start kind of understanding how price action is moving in this case right now to the upside. We had this strong bearish move right before the session started, and coming into the session we started seeing this strong bullish push that is now placing price above the EMAs, above rising EMAs on the C2 time frame. And then if we take a look at the context time frame, we can certainly see here some sort of accumulation MB out of this point. So we're gonna label this one here as an accumulation MB, and from this point price came up to this to this high, had some sort of pause here, coming back to the EMAs. So this one certainly was a momentum MB1, and from there price is currently, this is a candle that will be closing in a little bit more than 2 minutes. If this one closes above this high, this is going to be the validation of this MMB1 on our context time frame. So price would be above MMB1, above rising EMA, so that enables us to follow price on the validation time frame. So we take a look at the validation. This is what we have had so far. So this is the area of the accumulation on the higher time frame, on our context time frame, and from there we had price moving up to the upside here. We had some sort of failure at this area on the validation time frame. So after that point, we saw basically coming out of this area here, we had an accumulation MB. And with this price action here and closing above this high, this was MMB1. And actually at this time, this is not a price action that we follow, but actually this is something that we for sure could have been followed due to the fact that we had price aligned with our C and C2 time frames. And if we take a look at the flush here, this was I believe a clear flush from this high to the 20 EMA. Let's take a look at that one on our entry time frame to see how it looked like. This is basically the flush that we had at that time, and out of there we had the buildup of a double MB coming out of this MMB1 and this MMB2 here. So that was basically our double MB. So let's take a look at how the entry would have been presented here. So that was the tap in. Let's go and see here. So placing our buy stop here for a one contract. This one would have been protecting our MMB2. Normally I like to get also a protection around this area when the EMA started to turn to the upside, but this one would have meant to have, let's go and take a look here. So this should have been the risk place for that. So I believe this would be the right setup based on the correct risk. And from there, price would have tapped us in, came here, but this was certainly less than a 50% drawdown. So we let price continue the move. Then we had a move to the upside. And then we had this retracement. And as soon as we get a candle close above this high, the trade would have been placed at break even, basically at this point here. At this point, I've moved my stop loss to break even, and we from there we should let the trade run, and at this point this one has ran up to 2.5 R. So this was again this was a viable move that was in alignment to our whole EVC system, and the entry was based on this double MB setup here out of this flush on MMB1 on our validation time frame with a clear double MB. So this should have been the first actually trade available on today's session, and we will be keep on following from this time to see if this cycle that has just started from this point here in terms of the validation time frame, if this one wants to continue. If we see a flush here up to the 10 or 20, this is something that we could also start to follow on our entry time frame. So we'll be looking at that. So at this time we're seeing here the buildup of the expected run to the upside. This is basically MMB3, what we are seeing right now. So we are following this one here to see if there should be some sort of continuation to the upside. So we have to wait. Right now we already had a touch of the 20 EMA, but we are still below the containment line, so we have to wait for a proper move here above the containment line. So just like that, and wait to see if price wants to come and run above this high here. So we're still okay. Now we have a strong move here to the downside. Price kind of trying to reclaim the EMAs. So at this point what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw this containment line once again and see if there's gonna be some sort of double MB buildup from this point, or if this is just gonna fail. At this point it seems it's failing, but now buyers are coming in. We have to see how this candle closes here in 40 seconds. If we get a double MB buildup here and an entry opportunity here above this containment line around this could be an entry, a valid entry. We're 20 seconds to close this candle here. So we should see buyers coming in, but it seems we're gonna fail on this one. Yeah, we failed that one, so we're gonna dismiss this setup that we were considering here. So taking a look back at the other screen, this is where we are, basically out of this area here. So this is the start of the session, and this is basically the bullish move that we have seen so far. And we started considering sells as soon as we saw this candle here above the EMAs. We had a reset around this area here on our validation. Then this accumulation MB validated here. Out of this, we had this MMB1, and actually this one got into the full profit. So this one was a full TP coming from basically this flush here from the high of MMB1 up to the 20. So it was a clear flush here, and then we had the buildup of again a clear double MB with an entry above with an entry point above double MB above with the double entry based on the buy stop of this double MB, and price at that point was above this containment line at above rising EMAs, and the stop loss we placed that one here protecting the whole double MB. Price came, made some retracement, but this was less than 50% drawdown, so we let the trade run. And then after price came back to entry point, it started going, and after this point on this candle close above this high, we moved our stop loss to break even, and after that we saw basically price climbing and rising up to the full TP that occurred here. So that was that trade. After that we had actually some pause here, so let's draw this here.
Ended his interview on the Brian Kilmeade radio show.
We had out of this move here a push into a pause, so this was MMB2, and then from there we had price validating an MB2 here, then again some sort of flush here, but probably part of the same MMB, and then we came up to this point. So this one actually was MMB3 most probably, or you could for sure you could argue that this was its own MMB3, and then this was MMB4 that failed. But either way, was part of the bullish cycle that we were following, so we were enabled actually to look here into an entry. So let's go and take a look, even though this was inside a running trade. Let's take a look at that one to see if there was some sort of entry opportunity. So let's go and take a look. This is the point on that happening. Then we had this flush here that came into the 20, so the containment line would have been this one here, and out of there we had an MMB1 and MMB2. So maybe a buy stop above this high would have been valid for an entry, which would have led in this case to a move in our direction. But in this case, as this was part of the trade we were in, we're just not gonna consider this one as an additional entry. But certainly there was something here with a buy stop above this high, so price would have got into profits, then into drawdown, into profits, into drawdown, and from there it would have made the move. Probably taking a closer look at this one, as this one came down here, there's a chance that this one would have taken us out as a break even. Although there was no proper retracement here and a move above a high, so I'm not sure at this time, but yeah, maybe we would still manage this one, and it would not have been maybe around this area with this high above this, with this candle close above this high and this retracement, that we could have placed our trade to break even. Well, anyway, there was certainly something there, but we're not gonna consider that one because this was inside an already running trade. After that, we came here into this one, but again, this is around, let's take a look around this area here where we had a flush here into the 20. So this was a little bit more clear. So a buy stop above this high is again a valid trade, but again inside a running trade, so we're not just gonna consider that one. And as soon as we got here, we started, this is the one that we just that we were just looking live. We started following this flush here. So this one here was our containment line. Let's draw it correctly. So we were looking at this containment line, and price came here up to the 20 around this point. We had this move here. We had double MB, which was below the containment line, so nothing was considered here, and then basically price failed and kept on going to the downside. So in this case, there was no valid entry, no valid setup out of this flush that failed. So at this point, we are flushing on MMB2 on our higher time frame, our context time frame, as part of MMB2. So from here, we are gonna wait to see if this cycle is gonna continue to the upside based on a bounce out of the 10 or the 20 EMA, so that we could then start following the cycle as well on the validation time frame. So at this point, we're just gonna wait to see how this is gonna go from this point onwards. At this time, we've seen MMB2 on our context time frame flush down into the 20 EMA. This on the C2 time frame meant that we had a comeback of price back to the EMAs, but as we see some sort of bounce out of this point here, we're also seeing that price is pushing away of the EMAs. So taking a closer look at our validation time frame based on the point where this is at the moment, we can start looking for an accumulation and be out of this area into what could be the start of a new bullish move or bullish cycle. So what I have done at this point, based on this move here, is labeling this one here as a possible accumulation MB. That's why I'm gonna put a question mark here on that label, because I need to see a candle close on this time frame, a candle close above this high, so that this accumulation MB gets validated, and from there we would like to see some move of price away from the EMAs, and then price starting coming back as a flush into the EMAs to enable us to start looking for possible entries. So we have to wait at this point still to see how this is gonna develop. If this is gonna start again building some sort of a stage 1 into a stage 2 that we could follow on the entry time frame, or if this in this case wants to fail here and go for additional bearish move here. So this is basically waiting time for us. So we will come back later as soon as we see how price defines the way it is going to move around this area here. So this is where we left, basically at the time that we were expecting some sort of stage 1 around this area and a validation of this accumulation MB that we were expecting. However, price kept on falling. So this accumulation NB was removed from our chart, as this one was not validated, and as we saw price continuing the move to the downside, this is basically where we could have at this point around here, when we saw, or when we were actually watching on the C2 time frame, price coming here below the EMAs, and in this case price continuing to the downside through this candle on our context time frame. This would have certainly enabled us to take a look at some entry opportunities. So how would that be available for us? Let's go and flip the charts and let's see how that looked like. So this here was basically the point when we started to see this move to the downside. So here we would not be following that, as we were throughout all this area here on our C time frame, we were below the EMAs. So we're gonna just label this we're gonna just label the price cycle that we saw on the validation time frame. So this here was a distribution NB, got validated here. Then we had an MMB1, this one was validated through this candle. Then we had this flush once again. This one could have been labeled at that time as MMB2. And if we take a look at these flushes here on the MMB1 and the MMB2, if we take a look at where that happened on the C time frame, so we look at this chart, this was all around this area. So at that time, price was still under the MA, so we were not enabled to follow on the lower time frame or on our entry time frame, due to the fact that there was still no alignment here with our C time frame. Even on the C2 time frame, we can see that price was at that point still below the EMAs. But after the validation of MMB2 and this move to the downside, this strong move to the downside, we had certainly the buildup of an MMB3 out of this high, and at that point we were above the EMAs on our context time frame and above the EMAs on our C2 time frame. So when we had this flush here, this certainly was something that we could have been following. So this here, from this point throughout all this price action here, that was a viable flush to follow. So first, actually, when we came up to the 10 EMA here, the containment line, probably this is the, the touch of the 10. So at that time, the containment line was this one that I'm drawing here on the entry time frame. But here we had no double MB buildup actually. So we had this one and this one, but was never validated. So actually there was no entry around this area. Afterwards, we saw price flushing some more into the 20. There was no touch of the 20, but was close to it. So we have to adjust here the containment line like this. And at this point, we had the buildup of an MMB1. Let's say around this area here. Then we had price coming out of the containment line, and there was a buildup here of an MMB2. In this case, we saw price basically coming back to the EMAs at our entry time frame, but did not go below. And then we had the validation of this double MB. So this one was a valid entry for us, looking for basically the validation of this MMB3 through a candle close above this high here. That would have been our trade idea. So if we place a trade here, let's go and see how that one would have played out. Our stop should have been probably around this area here. This would have protected our MB2 and almost the EMAs completely at this area where they basically turned around from being to the downside to going to the upside. So this was a good amount of or a good placement of the stop loss. And then what happened, let's go and see. We had a tap in here at this point. We were expecting that, as we said before, price to come up and basically run above the high of MMB3. But in this case, we had basically price running back into drawdown here, staying here in drawdown. Then we had price reaching over a 50% drawdown. So at that point, and based on our rules, we were waiting to see if price had a comeback to our entry point to get a stop at break even. Otherwise, price could have just
the Freddie Mac mortgage rate numbers.
Price could just have ran into our stop loss for a full stop. But in this case, as we can see, based on the stop loss that we placed, we had price come up to this point, and then we had basically the run back to break even. Here we almost had a touch at break even. So this on your trading, this can be discretionary. So after being almost at a loss and price being almost at break even, you can anticipate this and close for a minor loss, or you can just place in this case or play in this case based on the rule, which says that we need price to tap at the entry point, and in this case this happened right at that point. So this trade actually would have been a break even trade. So I'm just gonna label this one here. So this would have been a break-even trade, and the one before, actually, just to put a label on, let's go and see, was around this area here when we were looking into buys. So let's go and take a look at this one here. We're gonna flip the charts once again. This is the one that we just discussed before. So let's go once again and take a look. This was this trade here. The idea on that one was based on the bullish move that we saw, basically coming out of the start of the session. We had this build up here of an accumulation MB validated, then an MMB1, which was also, or let's take a look here, or at this time this was still not validated. We were coming up to this point here. We had stage 1 on our validation around this area here, and as we saw price coming up validating this accumulation MB, this was here the MMB where we took our where we would have been able to catch that entry. So basically price at this time was above the EMAs on the C2, was coming from a very strong move here to the upside, and we had also on our C time frame price above the accumulation NB. Price was below rising MAs, and as we saw this flush here on an MMB1, we looked into the entry time frame, had a clear flush, had a clear double MB, and this was basically our entry that ran up to a full 3R take profit. So this one would have been the first trade on the session. And yeah, right now we are 2.5 hours into the session, and out of all the price action that was presented, just these two trades here were kind of valid. We also said before that there was an MMB2 here, and this flush here that was probably part of MMB2. Those times we were allowed to take a look, but as this was an ongoing trade, we're not gonna count those as part of our analysis and review, due to the fact that, well, whenever I am inside one running trade, I normally do not consider any other trade. And after that, we had certainly this failure on price. So when we were around this area here, as price came below the EMAs on the C, at that time we flipped the charts, and this is the previous trade that we just discussed, the one that ended up being a break even when we had this flush at MMB3. So at that time we were unable to look into sells, as we had price well above the EMAs on the C2 time frame as part of this bearish move, and we had here on our validation on our context time frame, I'm gonna just put the label on here. We had a distribution MB validated when price closed above this high here, and then we had the buildup of this bearish price cycle. None of this was price action that we were able to, or we were allowed to follow, due to the fact that we are below the EMAs here. But as soon as we had this strong move to the upside and this candle and the buildup of this MMB3, that's the time that we went in for looking into sells, and this ended up being this break-even trade that we just no, not this one, but that one here. the one that we just discussed, and ended up being a break even. And after that, we had some wiki price action on the 1 minute, and then basically a failure of this bearish cycle. And right now we are resting here as part of what could be MB1 on our context time frame, and we are now getting some sort of reaction from this point here. So now we can wait to see if there is gonna be maybe a new distribution MB here around maybe this area here. So this distribution MB has been validated through let's take a look here, has been validated through this candle close, and now we should wait to see price go away from the EMAs and then a comeback, a flush to the 10 and 20 EMAs for a new start of a bearish price cycle on the V, if that is what price wants to do. So this is what we are gonna continue watching, but just I wanted to make a quick review of what has been presented so far into the session. And as we saw, basically we just had two trades or to trade opportunities throughout the session so far. So let's go and follow this one and see if this one gets to present some sort of opportunity to the downside. So at this time we're seeing the build-up of an MMB1 here on the validation. So we're gonna go to our other screen and follow this one for a possibility of an entry opportunity out of this area here. Right now we are testing the 20 EMA with this clean flush here, so we should start seeing sellers come in and basically building a double MB above the containment line and entry point above rising MA. So let's wait and see if that's something that could come for an entry opportunity here. So at this point we were building a double MB, but we are still below the EMAs. So let's adjust the containment line at this point here. This is still valid if we see buyers come in to give an entry opportunity. So there's a double MB here, but the EMAs wouldn't still be rising as much as we would like to see. Price now has another test of the 20, went just at the same level there. So now let's just wait and see if there's a build-up. If we have a double MB around this area, this one could be valid. So that was a tap in. Now let's see if there's a reaction of price here in the direction that we expect. So we're getting that reaction there. Let's wait to see how this one develops. If we get here to this point, this would be the validation of that MMB1. So at this point, if we see price moving above this high, we could certainly move our stop to break even. So we're kind of getting there. So now we're gonna move the stop to break even. So price came back all the way down to our entry point. So unfortunately, we did not get the move there at this time. The one that we were expecting, this trade made up to 1.7 R and then came back to break even and then completely failed. So I just drew this trade on our other screen. So let's go and take a look at this one and make a quick revision of that one. We had basically price coming again throughout this bearish move here on our C time frame. It was this distribution MB validated, and we saw then this MMB1 here flushing. We had a comeback of price to the EMAs here. So this was right around this area. So when we were looking at that, we were expecting a bounce out of this EMAs. So we looked for a distribution MB, which was validated through this high. And after that, on our validation, we saw this bearish move. So for us, this was the start of a new cycle to the upside. And when we started seeing this pause here, we labeled this high as MMB1. And we started following up on this flush here on the validation through or from this high up to the 20 EMA. And this is how it looked like on the entry time frame. So there was a clear flush here. Price came, touched the 20, came a little bit under the 20 and reclaimed that EMA. And from there, we had the buildup of a clear double MB here with our entry point above the containment line and above EMAs that were starting to rise at that point. So it was a valid entry. We got a very nice reaction from the start of the move. We came directly up to 1.69 R. We were expecting to come here to validate MMB1 here as the start of the move, so we were pretty much confident on that move, so we let the trade run. And actually after this I was looking for a run above this high here to put my stop loss at break even, but actually I decided to put that at break even though we did not have that run. That's something that was let's say out of the rules that we have in our system, but due to the fact that we were almost 1.7 R into the move, I just did not wanted the trade to come back to break even, go through and got into a full stop, which would have been in this case. So this was kind of a little bending of that rule that we have. But when I see price somehow getting well above the entry price, so here at almost 2R, and I don't get here this the rule that I have a small retracement and then a candle close above the high of that retracement to put at the trade at break even. I do that anyways when I see that a move goes in my direction in a good amount, so that this would be no way for me to just see this failing and giving me a a full stop. So there is a chance when I do this that I can get here, get a break even, and then the move can happen. But well, that's part of the decisions that we have to take based on what we see going on by the time we are seeing the trade develop. So in this case, price made again came here up to 1.69 and then basically came back to break even. So this one ended up being a break even trade for us. So actually we are right now 4 hours into the session. No, I mean 3 hours into today's session, and we just had basically these break-even trades, and the one that was a full TP, the first one that we saw, but that one I wasn't able to get on and capitalize on that move. So not quite very productive session for me in terms of results today, but relevant in terms of basically get accustomed, get used to the way that the trades present and the way that each of them are different, and we have to be able to manage them the best way possible according to our rules, basically to be able to capitalize on them and to basically to take care also of our capital. So that is how I see this playing out. I believe I'm gonna be closing the session today a little bit earlier, so I'm gonna pause for a bit in case I see something else coming in. I'm gonna try to follow that, but if not, probably I will be closing today earlier. So let's see what happens. So I'm just about to close for today. Actually, after this trade where we ended up having a break even, this is the one that went up to 1.7R and came back to break even. After that, we saw a failure on the V. We came on our C time frame here around the 10 EMA, and then we had a reaction from there. So there was some sort of distribution MB here into an MMB1 here. But if we take a look at this one, this is around this area here, and if we try to look into a containment line around this time here, when we had basically a flush from this high into the 10 EMA here, this is the flush, but there was no entry at all at that time. We could say there was some sort of MMB1, a build up of an MMB2 around here, but this was actually not a true double MB build up, and the price never came above. And after that, we saw basically the failing of price below the EMAs, and after that, yeah, basically price kept on falling. And actually on the context time frame, we have price again below the EMAs. So at this time we're not supposed to follow any sells that would come in, not until we have again price above the EMAs on the C. And even on the C2 time frame, we have price here below the EMA. So actually this is kind of looking much more bullish than bearish at this point. If we flip this one more time, what we can see is that price is moving above the EMAs here. It's also moving up above the EMAs on the C, and has started some sort of cycle here on the V time frame. So honestly, this is looking much more bullish than bearish at this point. So if we should wanna go and look for any entries at this point, we should be looking into buys instead of sells. But either way, the other reason I am just closing is because the action throughout this session has been pretty much weaky. So we have basically coming from the start of the session with this bullish candle, we had this candles with very long wicks to the upside and to the downside. So a lot of back and forth on price, and that has made difficult here to find some good entries or some opportunities that would lead actually or have followed through to our take profits as we expect. The one example is this last trade that we took where we went up to 1.7. The idea was very clear, and if price had come to validate the MMB there, we would have been closed the trade as a full TP. But this is kind of going the same way that price has shown, that has been moving from the start of the session pretty weaky. So there's no reason here to stay in on this kind of price action. So we best wait for better conditions to coming into the market, and then start to follow that for proper entry opportunities. So this is all for today's session. I'll be coming back tomorrow for the Friday session.